Hey, good people. Before we move on to today's episode, I just want to do a quick disclaimer that today's discussion contains mention of suicide and drug use. So if you are triggered by it, please do not proceed any further. Thank you. Heyo, good people. How was your week, y'all? This is your host Niraj, and welcome to my good place. If you're new to this podcast, this is a podcast where we try to find collective good place through dialogues and conversations. We try to portray my good place, your good place, our good place. Sounds pretty sweet, huh? And if you're a regular listener, welcome back. Let me know what you guys think about the first discussion on race in America. I really hope you guys got around listening to both parts because there's so much knowledge, experiences, perspective being shared. I was picking up new thing every time I was replaying the conversation during the editing, So it is definitely worth listening multiple times if you choose to do so. I mean, if you've only done it once, I appreciate you too. Okay, before I talk about today's topic, I just have to do a quick house cleaning. So I have a quick favor to ask. If you like what I'm doing here, please follow or subscribe whatever platform you're listening from. And if you are an Apple user, give it a 5-star review, and really don't forget the review part because it apparently shows activity and it helps me go up the chart so we can all get our message across to more people, And if you feel like going extra mile, just follow me on Twitter or Instagram. It's @mygoodplacepod. Okay, let's talk about the topic of today, mental health, which is so fucking important. And in this discussion, we will tell you why. So you'll hear stories and experiences from the panel from different parts of the world. They all bring this unique perspective from different socio-cultural backgrounds. I don't want to take so much of your time with this intro because the discussion itself turned out beyond my expectation. So this is again a two-parter discussion, this being the first part. So definitely come back next week. And today's panelist for you guys is Ari, Kate, Avantika, Aaron, Anna, Yinka, and helping me moderate for the discussion, Sabina. So without further ado, here is your part 1 of discussion on mental health. You are not alone. Hey everybody, thank you so much for joining in from different part of the world, different communities, and we are today talking about mental health, and which is definitely important and definitely I think should be normalized, talked more, and discussed. So today we have, like I said, a panel from different backgrounds. So if you want to go around and tell us about you, maybe your name and your cultural identity, and then your relationship with mental health. So I'm going to start. My name is Niraj, and I am from Nepal, South Asian community. And mental health, I've seeked mental health before, and in my family too, in my family too, mental health is very talked about and seek. So I'll just start with that. So I'm gonna go to Avantika next.
Okay, sorry, I was just unmuting myself. I'm Avantika, and I'm also Nepalese and of South Asian descent. I've been in and out of United States for several years now, and I am an architectural designer, and I'm currently practicing in Baltimore. So, yeah.
Okay, and I'm gonna move to Anna.
Hi, everyone. My name is Anna. I'm coming to you from Minnesota. My family's very white, very conservative. My mom has a big Irish Catholic family, and my dad is, his dad was a reverend. So religion has been a big part of my upbringing. And that definitely complicates things with mental health, because there's kind of this idea of praying it away. But mental health is very rampant on both sides of my family. And I myself have OCD. And I mean, I was diagnosed when I was 5 years old. So my parents really got me help. But yeah, that's my story.
Thanks for sharing, Anna. Ari?
Hi, I'm Ari. I'm from the US originally, but my dad is from the UK, so I have dual citizenship. And I'm currently living in the UK and doing my undergraduate degree in psychology here, which has been, I've always had an interest in mental health and psychology, but doing the degree, I mean, it just goes so much deeper than you could ever kind of fathom. And I mean, I'm only an undergraduate, so there's still plenty to learn and life experiences yet to be lived. But I've been pretty lucky. I think for the most part, my family's quite open about mental health, although I've definitely seen a shift kind of the last maybe 10 or 15 years of my life. There's been a lot more open discussion than there ever was before. I know my dad's parents' generation, it was quite like stiff upper lip, typical kind of British, keep calm, carry on mentality, which my dad has carried with him as well through a lot of his life. And, you know, it's seeing how your parents deal with mental health can affect how you deal with mental health as well. But like I said, I think I've been quite lucky to have a family that's relatively open, and I've been pretty lucky to access mental health care when I've needed it. I've struggled with anxiety and depression, an eating disorder when I was younger as well. And there are, yeah, I mean, I question a lot about my mental health sometimes, and the more you learn, the more questions you have sometimes. But for the most part, I think it's just as important, if maybe not more important than physical health. I think if you have the proper kind of mindset and resilience in dealing with things, then that will benefit you throughout life.
Yeah, definitely. Kate?
Hi, I'm Kate. I am also British. I live in England at the moment, but I'm actually from Wales, and we've got strong ties with Wales in our family. Both my parents were born there, and most of my family is still there. I have mixed anxiety and depression disorder, and I've lived with depression now since I would say early on in my teens. And there is, I would say, a strong genetic link as well. My mum has suffered with it, and other people within my family, and generationally as well. I'm 38 now, so in the 80s when I was younger, there wasn't really much discussion about mental health at all. Wales is actually, I think, well known as well for a lot of stigma and a lot of things to do with mental health. Like Harry said, there's a lot of stiff upper lip, you know, and especially with the male side of things as well. Men, you know, it's not becoming to show your emotion or anything like that. It's seen as a weakness. But as I have similarities with Anna, my family was quite, you know, regular visitors to our local church, which I do agree with the links to mental health. And I found that extremely confusing once I started to go to high school. And obviously discussion of other religions and things like that were taught. And I started to question what I'd already been taught within my family and, you know, the church community that I was within. And then went to university, which is where I met Ari. And again, you know, it went into a lot of deep and dark places, shall we say, at times there, when it brought a lot of things from the, you know, brought some insight to you, which was quite difficult to deal with, and was quite lonely at times. But as Niraj knows, I'm a talker, so I am going to stop now, otherwise it's going to be more than an introduction.
No worries, you are good. Aaron, I'm gonna come to you, buddy.
Hey everyone, nice to meet you all. My name's Aaron. I am a Turkish American. My dad's from Turkey. I live in Minnesota. My mom's from Two Harbors, Minnesota, very small town. I am a digital marketer and also a runner. And those are all things that I think play into just things that I deal with, like with anxiety and some other mental health issues. In my family has issues with like alcoholism. So that's something that was very talked about and prevalent growing up. And we had a very open family in terms of like the discussions we would have about that kind of stuff. So I think that helped me deal with that kind of stuff early on. But I definitely have like addictive and obsessive tendencies, which I don't know. I need to talk to someone more to see if they are more like mental health issues of like OCD or not. But I do think that I definitely have a lot of anxiety and have dealt with depression in the past. So I feel grateful to have a family that can discuss those things openly. And I've seen a lot of my friends not be able to do that. And I think that's a lot of the stigmas with just like identity, like cultural upbringing, like religion, all these things can play into that. Experiences that we have from an early age. And I'm really excited to be here and have this discussion today. I think it's really important to try to discuss these things openly. And I started a employee resource group at work for mental health issues, and hoping I can learn some stuff today that will help make that a bigger impact at work.
For sure. And if you want to share the link later, I can share it with the panel also, so we can all help out. Yinka, I'm gonna come to you.
All right. Hi guys. My name is Yinka. Originally Nigerian, but I also live in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I'm a treasury analyst, and in regards to mental health, I would say, just like some of you guys, it's something that growing up wasn't really discussed in my family. It's just you're just expected to like make it work for yourself or try to be happy. It was just something we were intentional about. But not until like recent years where I started being intentional about like how I feel about certain things, or like when you tend when you begin to develop like more relationships with people and you see how you affect relationships and people tell you about yourself. So like not until recent years have I been really intentional about like my mental health, or like the reasons why I I am the way I am, or the reasons why I act a certain way. So I'll just say like it was just something I've been practicing recently, and like growing up, it wasn't something I was really like aware about, I'd say.
Thanks, Yinka. Definitely. Sabina. So Sabina is gonna help me moderate today, and I am gonna let Sabina introduce herself, about herself, and her relationship with mental health.
Thank you, Neeraj. My name is Sabina. I am from Nepal too, like Neeraj and Avantika. I have been working in a mental health field for past 10 years. I started with direct care, but now I'm more into training. So yeah, I'm really excited to be part of this discussion. And yeah, welcome guys.
And yes, so I'm gonna randomly pick people with my questions, and just be ready. I'm gonna call you out, all right? So I'm gonna start with Avantika. So what does mental health mean to you? What do you think of when we talk about mental health? And also tell me about the culture, or how you were brought up, and what mental health meant while growing up, and also how you think of mental health right now.
Thanks for the question, Neeraj. As far as I can remember, that I always believed that mental health had to deal with a chemical imbalance in your body. Well, it is a percentage, I think, of people who have that, but I always associated it as a physical bodily reaction that happens, and but now understanding it at a closer standpoint, as I also dealt with a lot of mental health issues the past year. I think all of us did, and it can happen at an unfavorable situation. It can happen at workplace. It can happen with relationships. I didn't know that it was such a vast and complex field of, um, and it's, I think past year has really opened me, my family, to talk about this, because growing up in a Nepalese household, we really don't talk about this at all, ever. And I think last year, everything has been changing its narrative. And I think even mental health's narrative started changing in Nepal, in my family, in my friends, and we've got so much more open right now. So yeah, the current situation, I would say it's much more open, but before, nothing at all, almost zero. And it's not even not being able to talk about it, but just not, we never acknowledged it at all. So that's where I come from. Thanks, Neeraj.
Thank you, Avantika. Anna, if anybody has follow-up, feel free to raise your hand at any point of this discussion, and we'll just come to you. So Anna, tell me about what does mental health mean to you, and definitely you shared that you have OCD. If you feel comfortable sharing about your experience and your experiences and perspective while growing up in the conservative family.
Yeah, man. So I think it was a very, my parents ended up being really great with it. But it definitely took some time. I think the reason why they were so open to me getting therapy, and I mean, I've been on medication since I was 5 years old for it, was kind of twofold. My mom and dad saw the effects of mental health on their families growing up. Like they both have OCD on both sides of their family. They didn't really know what it was. They just thought it was people being quirky. So I think they, I mean, I was struggling so much as a little kid with it. I would need things like a certain way. I'd need things to be in a certain order. I would have horrible thoughts. Basically, it's like most people's brains have this filter that, you have a random thought and you can just filter it out. People with OCD, those thoughts kind of stick. And it just makes you question a lot about yourself. You kind of obsess over them, and then you do like actions, like putting things in order or whatever, to kind of calm the thoughts. So it was very, I was doing weird stuff, like tying my shoelaces like 5 times, that sort of thing. So it was kind of hard for my parents to ignore. And so I think that's a big reason why they were open to me getting therapy. And also, actually, my dad had to go through some pretty serious therapy because right before I started having OCD, he actually found our neighbor's kid had killed himself, and he was the one that found the kid hanging from the tree. So, it really, I think that experience really opened his eyes and made him much more open to talking about it. I think it was more like my extended family, and they still don't really like to admit like, oh, that's why my aunt's like this, or oh, that's why my uncle's like this. They'll have an explosion and then like not talk about it, and so that's definitely been really challenging for my parents, having to deal with that. But within my nuclear family, it's been if we really had to deal with it, because it's kind of been like do or die at some moments. So yeah, that's it.
Wow. Yeah, it's heavy. Thanks for sharing, Anna. Ari, I'm gonna come to you, and same question. What does mental health mean to you? And especially you're studying psychology now. Maybe if you can contrast the differences, what you thought it was, or yeah, what does mental health mean to you?
Okay. I think for a very long time, I just associated mental health with like negative aspects of it. So, like, I think more recently, especially, but a lot of the time you see mental health portrayed in a very negative light. Like, it's always about the condition and like the negative effects of the condition and the harm that it can cause mostly people around the person with the condition, and not necessarily focused on the struggle of the individual. But since just like growing older and having more life experiences, and obviously like having a formal education about it, I kind of just associate it with more like, I guess, resilience and emotional regulation. So kind of, to me, like mental health is mental health, not mental illness. And I think those terms get used interchangeably a lot. But yeah, I think for me, like I said before, it's just as important as physical health. And I would argue, like you could argue, I guess, if you're playing devil's advocate, that it's more important than physical health, because if you have the ability to deal with hardship and stress and cope in a healthy way, you know, you will still obviously have struggles with your physical conditions, but you might be a little bit more like mentally and emotionally well off in dealing with them. But yeah, culturally, it's something that's quite dependent on culture and very culturally subjective. What some cultures might consider like a pathology could just be completely normal. There are like personality differences as well. So I remember learning about there's this theory of the five, like the big five personality traits, which are openness, agreeableness, conscientiousness, neuroticism, and extroversion. And the theory is that everybody kind of is on a little bit of a sliding scale for each of those traits. But you'll find like in Italy, they tend to score higher in neuroticism. And so like for an American person visiting Rome and dealing with like the traffic and the people in the city, they might feel like offended by some people just because of the way that everybody interacts. But in Italy, it's like just a normal way of associating with people. It's, yeah, very culturally subjective. It's kind of, I don't know, it's a funny thing for me. Like I have seen the shift from kind of mental health being more of a taboo subject to being very prominent, and especially like with the pandemic. But it's also like in the US and the UK, you're living in a predominantly white, like colonial capitalistic society. So there is a lot of kind of social pressure to behave a certain way, and like this whole idea of success and what it looks like if you're on the cover of Forbes, you've made it, like you're done, that's the peak of your life, you know. And I think a lot of that is kind of fueled by this like capitalistic guilt. Like if you're not doing everything, if you're not like bending over backwards and like making yourself physically ill from like overworking and overstressing, then you're like not trying hard enough, and you know it's a fault with you. There's a lot of kind of, I guess, like internalization of failures and success, but I don't know, that could go down a whole nother rabbit hole, so I'll leave it at that. But yeah, there's a lot.
Thanks, Ari. And I am going to move to Kate. Kate, what does mental health mean to you? And since you yourself seek help, and yeah, tell us your experience and mental health.
I think when I was small, I was quite poorly, so I was with my mum quite a lot. My earliest memory, I think, where things started to go, I think I must have been about 4 or 5 when I was made to go and sleep on my own bed, and I'd slept with my mum all this time. My dad was obviously on shifts at work; he was a policeman. And yeah, I found separation a real issue. I've both my grandparents, one of my grandparents, sorry, was German. He was a German prisoner of war. My other grandfather was a English soldier and also a German prisoner of war. So growing up with the history side in our education and the way that it was taught, I found that weighed heavily on my shoulders because we weren't my granddad was always open about it. He was very young. He was caught at the very end of the war as a prisoner of war, sent to Canada and then brought to the UK in Wales where he met my nan. And they actually used to meet up in secret, and they had like her cousins hide little letters for them so they could find each other. But that always, I found that a real struggle. So from an identity point of perspective with my German grandfather and not feeling like I could talk about it, I found that incredibly difficult. And there was also bullying in school with my grandfather being German and also my father being a police officer. So I was used to not being liked very much as a young person for whatever the reason was. And then when I got to my teens, I was very depressed, but as people have already picked up, depression and anxiety was not spoken about. It wasn't really understood, especially in children. You were perceived as a moody, miserable, lazy, possibly ungrateful child a lot of the time, where I didn't really understand my emotions, what my emotions were, and how to handle with those. And also suicide was quite a big part of my life. Earlier on, I have to be obviously quite because this isn't my personal experience, but somebody quite close to me when I was younger. I was coming up to starting high school, and a parent had taken their own life, and nobody would talk to me about it. And I was caught up in the middle of this time, not understanding how to comfort my friend. And I was also not allowed to discuss it with my friend. And they weren't aware of what actually happened, but I was. So I had to keep that as a secret for a very, very long time, and that weighed heavily on my shoulders. As a female as well, there's been I've experienced sexual assault and harassment and things like that have added to it, which has added to the not liking myself as a person. Not being able to talk openly about feelings, as my family was the very keep calm, carry on, stiff up lip. Expressing yourself in a vulnerable way was not really, the way to carry yourself. It was like, come on, you need to just pick yourself up and get on with it and you'll be okay. And obviously, as we know, we're layers, and it just piles up and piles up and piles up and piles up on top of you until you can't deal with it anymore. And from that point on, now I've been on a journey of medication, psychotherapies. I've also I completed my psychology degree last year, which has been sometimes a painful time, but also a really, really helpful tool for me to understand myself and to understand other people. So I've been so grateful for that. It's been one of the best 3 years of my life in that sense of self-growth. So yeah, that's where I'm at now.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you so much for sharing all your experience, what you've went through. And a lot of people go through these difficult moments thinking they are alone, they don't have anybody to talk to. But I hope your story resonates with people and they are more open about their situation, their status, wherever they are, whatever condition they are in. So thank you, Kate. And I see Ari has a question or a follow-up for you.
Yeah, it's not specifically for Kate, but just kind of to trail along with what you just said. I think it is important to know that you can talk about it. There are people who will listen, but at the same time, it's equally important to know that, like, it's not just you. Like, you know, it's very easy to feel alone when you're going through mental health issues and crises, but sometimes, like, for me, reading has been really helpful, and just hearing like similar thoughts and experiences in somebody else's head. It's like, oh wow, like maybe this is more normal than I thought it was. And yeah, I think it's really important for breaking down the stigma. And that's all I wanted to say, is just, yeah, it helps to know that other people go through very similar things, if not for similar reasons. But yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, the theme of the episode, really, you are not alone. Aaron, I'm gonna come to you, buddy. What is mental health to you, and tell us about the community you grew up in. What does mental health means in that community?
Thanks, Neeraj. I mean, mental health to me is like one of the most important things to talk about as a society. I think it can be used a little bit as a buzzword, and I was trying to think about like, what does it even mean? Like the definition of it. And I think when we hear the word mental health, it makes you think of issues a lot of the time, but it's not just like a good or bad thing. It's like how you interact with the world on a day-to-day basis is like your mental health essentially, and you're like the culmination of all those experiences. So I did grow up hearing that like mental health issues were a chemical imbalance, and that it wasn't something that you can control, and it was like um, something that you needed medication to help out with. So I think that that can be really like frustrating, because you don't really have control over the situation when you hear it that way. But I think like for me, a lot of my mental health issues came down to um, just like situational things, also like environmental things that were going on, and experiences. So like, for example, like I grew up, I was a Turkish person in Edina, Minnesota, which is a very like white upbringing, as I'm sure anyone from this area knows about, and just didn't really relate to a lot of people. I played football or soccer, what we call it here, and would get made fun of a lot for that, but I put a lot of identity into like trying to be the best I could be at that sport. Um, and then when I got older, I got injured and I sort of lost that identity, and like what made me a person. I felt like changed so much, and I felt so lost. Um, and yeah, it was like my Turkishness was in that. And then I was like, oh my gosh, like I rooted so much of my Turkishness into like my ability to play soccer or not. And now I feel so like, oh gosh, I'm like American too. And my dad like taught us that we're like mostly Turkish, and there was a lot of issues with that, with like my mom and my sister, and just like a lot of fights when we were growing up related to like who we were and who we weren't. And I think it just after a lot of like education and reading and communicating about this stuff with a counselor, I've learned that like I can be both things at the same time, both Turkish and American. um, I think like self-awareness is the biggest thing to try to learn to control your mental health, um, and trying to teach those things to younger kids would be the direction I would love to go. But I don't think it's really like something that just has a one-off solution, like a silver bullet. I feel like we have to keep talking about it. It's a continuous changing spectrum that we're dealing with throughout life.
Yeah, I think identity crisis is a big thing, especially first generation migrants anywhere in the world. And as most of you know, I myself am here. I'm on a student visa. I'm not even I didn't even migrate, and I feel that pressure of belonging in this new world that I'm in. So yeah, I know what you're talking about. But okay, Yenka, your thoughts on mental health, and tell us about how Nigerian community takes mental health, or if things have changed or anything.
Yeah, definitely. I think I would just start with like my upbringing and my background. So like mental health is something that is not really discussed or acknowledged. Like it's seen as something that's like soft, and we don't just pay attention to that. You like an average Nigerian is like trying to acquire material things, trying to acquire wealth. I feel like we relate mental health with happiness, and happiness derived from like becoming wealthy or like getting rich and things like that. So not until like when I actually moved in 2014. I mean, coming from Nigeria, where like I feel like that was where I developed my adolescence, like most of my characters and things like that. So it was like a major shift for me, where like my first year I wasn't really relating with people, because it was more like, why did I move here? You know, like I wasn't making friends. I wasn't going out and things like that. I was always comparing things to like back home in Nigeria as well, which wasn't good, but like that was something I did. So like at the end of all of that, I realized like I was more intentional. I was more aware, because I wasn't really happy. So like it was those things that made me become to a point where like I started learning more about myself. I actually started being intentional about like things I did, or like people I relate with, or like just protecting my energy, you know, and just like making sure like it's just positive vibes around me, basically. Then also then I started making friends, I started relating with more people, like seeing how I act and how things I do really affects other people. And then also people just calling me out on like out, because like people will be like, oh, you're not emotional, or you don't share this emotional side of you, or you don't like talk about yourself and things like that. But for me, it's like, it's not important, because that's how I grew up. But on the flip side, it's actually important. It's actually the basis of like how we relate, or like the basis of what affects how you are in the outside world. So like basically, not until recent years have I been more intentional about like actually acknowledging my faults, and also acknowledging about like how what I'm doing or how I am is really affecting other people, you know, and also just learning more about myself, and also practicing being more open, practicing like, I think until like, this was something I was talking about with one of my friends, like not until like last year did I start telling my parents I love them, things like that, you know, because like I never really saw them express the emotional side growing up. So it was just nothing we talked about, you know. But now it's like I'm fine with that. Like I can say it, like it's not that I express my feelings to my friends. And now I do it so much to the extent that like people are always shocked that why are you so free? Why are you like this and things like that? So yeah, I think over time is something I've been more intentional about, and like I've also just been acknowledging how I am emotionally and also physically, you know. And also I think like mental health also actually equates to like physical well-being. I feel like your mental affects the physical, you know. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in my community too, mental health, you just like suck it up and then move on, you know. It's just bizarre. Sabina, I'm gonna come to you, and if you wanna add anything to or ask any question to our panelist to on this question, or if you have anything to add since you work on this field.
I think you all said it all, you know, even though we come from a different community, a different background, I think mental health still have some stigma and the biases. So I think talking about it more definitely helps, you know, shedding the light on mental health as an issue. I think, who said it? I think it was
See, she's a
Ari.
solid moderator, making notes and all that.
I think it was Ari who kind of talked about how mental health is, you know, more important than physical health also. That definitely, you know, I try to highlight that all the time because it is so interrelated, right? Mental health and physical health. But yeah, definitely, you all kind of touch upon everything. So thank you guys.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, Sabina, if you want to move on to the other.
Yeah, definitely. So moving on to the next question, because of the time, I think I'm going to combine two questions together. Why do you think the mental health is such a sensitive topic? And what are some of the challenges or the barrier? I think we'll go with Avantika, if that is okay.
Yes, that's okay. I think it's a very sensitive topic. Number one, as I said before, not being normalized topic. As a Nepali, living in a Nepalese community, how hard it is to talk about mental health. So it's not about not having that space to talk about mental health. It's just we didn't see it growing up. We don't see it happening frequently. So we never just talk about it. We just move on, and that's number one. But number two is also because it becomes so personal, and some people are not ready to get vulnerable. I have had so many instances where when I'm trying to talk to my friends, but it's like, what do you talk about it? And they don't want to share because living in communities, it's like we have extended families, cousins, so many things that are interrelated, and people don't want to share because it's going to spread and it's going to be a very big deal. So I think it's a sensitive topic because people don't like to talk about their personal life, and it's not normalized, so it makes the topic even more sensitive. I think those two are it. And then maybe in Asian culture, because it's seen as a modern concept, I don't know, I could be wrong, but it's seen as a very westernized modern concept too. So it might be very sensitive looking at it from that aspect. But yeah.
Thank you, Avantika. I feel like, I come from the Nepali community too. It's not that mental health doesn't exist in Nepali community. It's because of the stigma and the biases. We didn't see as much of the cases, and working in the mental health field, I kind of see that Asian people won't seek help until it's like really, 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 really bad. You know what I mean? So I feel like it's not happening in our community, but it's because of the stigma. People are not coming forward, as you say, because of the society's culture and all that. So thank you, Avantika. Ari, you want to go next?
Sure. I think as humans, we don't necessarily like to accept that we're not invincible. I think that's like a very hard thing for us to come to terms with because we are like uniquely self-aware, but at the same time, we have to like fight the knowledge of our own mortality a lot. And I think that like a lot of times like just emotional struggles are associated with kind of like weakness, and weakness isn't really like a survival trait. And this is like totally on a kind of biological evolutionary perspective, but I think, yeah, the reason that it is often a taboo subject is because we're basically just self-aware primates and we're terrified of our own mortality. So we adjust our culture and our mindsets to reflect like what our ideals are and kind of reject our flaws a little bit. But at the end of the day, I mean, I think that it would benefit everybody to just accept that we're like organic beings. We're just humans and we're not perfect. And it's not like a bad thing to continue to strive to be perfect as long as you're doing it in a healthy way. And as long as you have the knowledge that perfection doesn't necessarily exist. And I think, I can't remember who said it, but the normalization of just basic human emotions is a good start. I mean, we all experience similar emotions, we all have human brains, so we're all gonna relate in one way or another. But I think like some of the issues as well with addressing it, education obviously is a big one. Then there's things like accessibility to mental health care, as well as like the fit of treatment. So for one individual, like they might choose to go down more of a culturally specific way of handling whatever they're going through. not necessarily, you know, like psychotherapy might not work as well for some people. They might need to reach out to like a religious figure or, you know, a cultural figure. But then there's also like so many things. I could go on forever. But compensation is another thing as well. Like you want people who work in the mental health profession to be well paid because they do require a lot of training and qualification and experience, and the job load is quite high. But then you have the worry about like how authentic are the people going into these careers? Like, are they doing it for the money, or are they doing it because they genuinely want to improve people's lives? And I mean, that's just something you can see in a lot of career fields, but it's a special limitation in mental health, I think.
Thank you, Ari. You said a lot of things when it comes to the barriers. No, for real, I see this all the time in my field too. The accessibility, the pay, I feel like most of the people who choose mental health as a career do it just because they really want to have that impact on people's life, not for the money. So when I do training, I do new hire training, and the first day I tell them that if you're here to make money, this is a wrong field to run. So thank you for that. Neeraj, I saw your hand raised. Do you have something to say or follow up?
I forgot. I had something and I forgot.
Was it something Avantika said, because you raised your hand after her?
Okay. Yeah, don't worry about it. I already forgot. So yeah, let's move on.
All right. Thank you, Ari. Okay, Kate, do you want to go next?
Yeah, happy to. You've made some good points there, guys. Wow. Firstly, yeah, I totally agree about the culture side of things with therapies that are offered. It's highly biased to the Western models. And that has been an issue with a lot of the areas, I think, of psychology, is it doesn't, enable people to have flexibility in what they're doing. Also, there was something else somebody said and I can't remember. But one of the points I wanted to make, that I think especially psychopathy, all these kind of issues within mental health have been villainized heavily, and a lot of things that we don't even really notice that much. And for me, I remember growing up and there were two particular movies that I'd watched that terrified me and actually put me off going for help, because that's where I thought I was going, and I was not having it. One was Beauty and the Beast, Disney, where they come in that horrible horse-drawn carriage with the guy. Terrified me. And the other was Return to Oz. I don't know if anybody's seen that film, but it is in the creepiest asylum you will ever see, with flickering lights going down the corridor. She's strapped to the gurney and then they're going to electrocute her. It is horrific. And I'm not going to go into the talking head section because that freaked me out. But all these things, joking aside, have all been, have been cemented in my mind as a kid that mental health is something that's scary, it's frightening, it's bad. People that have mental health issues or are mentally ill are scary and bad. And this is all rubbish. The majority of mental health issues, the people that have the mental health issues are the ones at risk most of getting hurt from other people. And a lot of the treatments that we have are all related to big pharma, and that's another issue I really have. That if we did fund mental health treatments with more talking therapies and support, and person-centered approach, rather than just prescribing medication as freely as it is. Myself, when I've been to see GPs, I've changed my GP within the surgery to others because I've gone in, they've not even asked me why I'm feeling that way or is there anything that's triggered it. I've just been passed a prescription, off you go. That's another person out the door and it isn't a problem anymore. And for me, that is the biggest failure, really, is not listening to people and not letting them have that moment of being, like you say, vulnerable in a safe space. because that was the one thing I really struggled with. I still struggle to this day, and Ari will tell you I'm not very good at being vulnerable in the moment at all. I would rather run for the hills and do something else than open up and cry in front of people. That I like to feel that, you know, I support and I'm strong. I can't do that. So for me, there needs to be more safe spaces funded where people can go to in a crisis. Like people have picked up previously, more talk in education from a really early age. Like we've already said, I think somebody brought up saying that it's okay to be sad, it's okay to express our emotions, and also, you know, not, you know, force feed people pills, even though they are a good thing. And I am not pill bashing here, because I'm on medication myself and I will take it because I need to take it, but it shouldn't always be the first to come to thing to make people better, when really it tends to just mask an issue that's not being solved, because medicine is doing that job that could be done by somebody else. I hope.
Absolutely. I think you said it so beautifully, Kate. I think medication definitely helps to baseline, you know, but then again, we do have to look other resources, whether it's the other holistic, you know, approaches, I guess I would say. So thank you for that. And you talked about education and kind of normalizing since the beginning. We actually had a pilot program, you know, that's mental health kind of taught in school too. So thank you for that. I'm gonna go next to Erin.
Thanks. Yeah, I think like the biggest challenge from my point of view is just like from a young age, you're taught to try to be perfect here and trying to like continually become like a successful person, and that's like monetary or like financial or financial or like fame success. But there's a lot of different definitions. I think we could broaden that definition of what success means. And for example, like when you're younger, you have standardized testing, you're trying to get the highest score. If you get a bad grade, you get like talked to from like the teacher. And I feel like having resources to talk about other things, a lot of the time, I feel like if you're not performing at the highest level, it's because there's something else going on. Whether it's like a chemical imbalance or just things in your environment that are causing that. And I don't think we really do a good job of like teaching those tools at a young age. I don't know if that's, I feel like it's starting to change with the stigma or just like more awareness around mental health, but I think there's a lot of work to do for sure. And I was even talking about it. It's just so like wrapped up in our culture. Like I work in marketing, and one of my coworkers was saying, I struggle with anxiety, but I don't ever talk about this with anyone because I don't want my work to be perceived any less valuable. And I think when we have that kind of environment, it just makes it so it's feels like people are fake or lying and like can't be their true selves. And rightfully so. Like you don't want, if you're gonna live in a culture that values like financial rewards over other types of things, then it just kind of like reinforces the issue. So I see a lot of that in my field, people trying to protect the perception of themselves. And then, yeah, I think like the biggest challenges are we're looked at as like products from a young age. Like even my sister is like just had a kid and like trying to get him in the best daycare so he can succeed the best and make sure he's set up on the right path. It's like we are growing up in a pretty competitive environment and like this rat race, which it's all just like kind of reinforced through like media and cultural expectations, family expectations, like trying to fulfill a certain identity. And I think it's just really hard to have the awareness and education unless you're like continually reminded of it. So that I think there's quite a few challenges, but I think it's really, I'm very hopeful with conversations like this and other resources that I see becoming more and more available. Especially I think we need to talk about like during COVID too. mental health issues that are going on right now, because I think they're more prevalent than ever.
Thank you, Erin. Absolutely, absolutely. I think COVID kind of, made us realize that how important it is to have that human connection, because before COVID, we all were just running this rat race, as you're saying, every day you're just like trying to, like just wake up, work, and do like some things during the weekend and stuff like that. But with the COVID, the world just halted and people have to live in this isolation. So I think we kind of realized the importance of human connection and the things we took it for granted, like smaller things, like just going to the restaurant and eating and, just meeting your friends and family. So thank you, Erin. Yenka, did I say your name correctly? Do you want to go next?
Okay, yeah, for sure. Yeah, you said it correctly, but I think mental health in my community is definitely a sensitive topic in the sense that it's seen as some type of weakness. It's seen as you're like a soft person, and like because like Nigeria is such a fast-paced environment where like people are always just on the go, and like also because like people are always worried about what the next person is going to say about them. So like they just internalize whatever they're going through. And then this made me realize like over time, I've just realized like because for me personally, the shift from coming to Nigeria to the States where like Nigeria, very fast paced, everyone is always trying to achieve something every day. And then you come to Minneapolis where it's kind of slower. Like I've been able to realize like for the most part, I've been just trying to like making things make sense for myself. I don't know if that makes sense. Like actually doing some certain things because like I don't want to be in tune with the reality of my mental state. Like just doing things to convince myself or just trying to stay happy and things like that. Just certain activities to just take my mind away from actually things I need to process for myself. So I'll say on that in that regard is definitely sensitive, and also is the challenge is just bringing yourself to actually acknowledge because you grow up like you spend 20 years of your life growing up a certain way, and then now you're brought to the education part of things where you actually have to learn and process like how you do things or how you affect other people and then your mental state and things like that. So I think for me the biggest challenge is just like bringing yourself to actually acknowledge these things and also just learning and practicing, because like you're used to a certain thing and then now you're exposed to a different type of like perspective on life, and then you have to take the steps every day to practice, and then it becomes like I feel like it's your mental is definitely like a journey, but it also takes you practicing day by day so you could get used to some certain traits, some certain like qualities and things like that. So for me, I would say the challenge is just like to practicing the education part of things.
Thank you, Yanka. Definitely, mental health is a lifelong journey, right? And you do have to kind of figure out what works for you because it's so individualized and there is no like one plan works for everybody. So thank you for highlighting that. Anna, do you want to go next?
Yeah, definitely. Man, I think I definitely agree with what like Erin talked about, Ari. I feel like everyone's kind of mentioned the like cultural obsession over perfection. I think that definitely makes it hard to admit that you're fallible. And I also think people we say that we praise individuality in our culture, but we only praise like a certain type of individuality. If you're like too quirky, too weird, it's not okay, and some of this stuff is uncomfortable. And I mean, I know that some of the stuff I do is weird, you know, and people just don't like to deal with it or they prefer to ignore it. I know that mental illness can be or it's I mean, obviously, it's a chemical imbalance, but it's also very irrational, And so I think that makes it very difficult to talk about. I feel like we're a very rational society and we don't really like to talk about the things that are purely just emotional, you know? So yeah, I think that's something that I've really struggled to be open with. And I think in college, I was able to kind of get out of that perfectionist mindset, you know, through some amazing teachers and everything. But it's still something that I don't like. Like if someone asks me how I'm doing, I'm having a bad OCD day, I'm not going to be like, yeah, you know, I'm just having these weird thoughts about X, Y, and Z. Like, you know, I'm not going to, because then I have to like explain what OCD is, and there's all these misconceptions about it. And you know, I feel like people will think that I maybe shouldn't be doing. I work as a policy aide. It's kind of a high stress job, and so maybe they think like, oh, I don't have the capacity to do something like that. So it's there's like, it gets exhausting explaining it to people, and then you also definitely fear that you'll be seen as less than, even though I think it gives a lot of people really unique perspective on life when you've had those sorts of struggles. Yeah.
Thank you, Ann. You know, yeah, I mean, you said it really well. I think our society have kind of curated this idea of normal, and sometimes, you know, we don't feel safe to share because, as you say, we have to explain again, and you know. So thank you for sharing that. I think Kate has her hand up. Kate, do you want to add on to?
Yeah, that was just so brilliantly put. I mean, with the perfectionism, especially, that's what I did for my degree. And I found this amazing paper, and it was basically saying the past 20 years, capitalism and this culture of individualism has created the biggest drive in perfectionism going. And perfectionism is related to so many things, mental health related. It can be eating disorders, burnout with trying to work, especially with graduates coming out of university. That's really prevalent at the moment. The other thing was as well about when people ask you about your mental health or make a comment about it and maybe don't realise how much that has either triggered something within you or has reminded you over something that you're trying not to think about. Mine is dermatillomania. I pick my skin and around my fingers, which has left them quite scarred now. I've been doing it since I was a teen. And I used to get some people saying, oh, why'd you do that? It's disgusting. Why'd you pick your nails? It just looks awful. And that would then trigger me to do it even more, because that was part of my coping mechanism. But also with the skin picking, the more that you pick them, you think you're going to make it better, but it obviously becomes worse. So you're just in this vicious cycle. And the other thing was about working within mental health, which is what I'm trying to do, but with mental health issues, I've always got that concern that they're going to find me out and realize that I shouldn't be there, because somebody with mental health would be kind of ironic trying to help somebody else with mental health, which I know is a really negative and toxic way to think, but within the society we live in, it kind of forces you to feel like that if you aren't this perfection that fits all these tick boxes, like I know somebody mentioned earlier, you're a failure, and that's how you're made to feel. And that, unfortunately, is the Instagram generation of the filter and things like that. And people are, as I found out not long ago, were reporting that they're going in to get plastic surgery to look like their filters, because people feel the need to change themselves. It's just so sad. That really makes me sad that people were willing to go that far to change their beautiful, unique face into something so, well, it's not unique, is it? A filter. Sorry.
No, don't be sorry, Kate. I don't know in UK, but in US, if you have a mental, like if you've gone through the process of healing and you're still, having therapy and stuff like that, you have a, like the peer support position where you can share your experience, so it will be helpful to other people who are going through the same thing. So your life story can be somebody else's survival guide. I always say this. And if I don't know about UK, but here in the US, definitely you can be a peer support, and I mean, make a difference in so many people's lives. So thank you for sharing. Neeraj, you wanna go next?
No, so
Or
yeah, for sure. So there's just so much good information, and I see. This is why I should start making notes, because I had a solid thing to say and then I totally forgot. So, but I am gonna move on definitely, and I'm gonna go around picking random. All right, I know, this is not enough, but my mom always says if you take too much of what you like in one sitting, you'll just grow to dislike it. So with that in mind, I want y'all to come back next week for more of this discussion. And I just want to quickly thanks again my panelists, Ari, Kate, Avantika, Aaron, Anna, Yinka, and also especially Sabina to help me moderate this discussion. And you listeners, thank you, because without you, I would just be talking to my laptop probably. So thank you. You guys get me motivated. You guys get me going. So I appreciate y'all. And just to tease you, I'm currently working on the topic called counterculture. So look out for that. And maybe religion too. I'm really debating if I should do religion. So let me know. Just get in touch with me via Instagram or Twitter. It is @mygoodplacepod. And if you have any feedback or if you want to participate, just email me at mygoodplace.pod@gmail.com or leave me a voicemail at 612-524-8235. And finally, like I said, if you're interested, there's a form too I created with a bunch of topics, so just check that out. It will be on the link that I have from Linktree. So yeah, just let me know. And till next Tuesday, I'll see you then.